So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our keynote and opening speaker, Sandip Sahota. He is the SVP and Enterprise Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Bank of Montreal. So Sandip, you may not know this, but I actually listened to his lessons of a data leader a long time ago, and I'm absolutely thrilled that our paths have crossed again. One thing that really stood out to me is his focus on practical execution and understanding the journey to get to shared success. It was great. So today the topic is called Lessons from Past Innovations, and I'm certain it's going to be rich in actionable next steps. So welcome, Sandip.
Thanks so much. All right. Hopefully you can hear me, and I'm coming in loud and clear. There we go. I got a couple of thumbs up. So my job today and the challenge I've taken on is how do I keep your focus for the next 30 minutes? And congratulations, by the way. You fought the traffic. You got here. You fought the traffic to check in. You've now had breakfast. You've had some caffeine. And now comes this keynote. Like, what is this guy going to talk about? So I'll tell you. I'm going to keep your focus with two things today. Elevators and refrigerators. Two things you used probably today to get here. An elevator and a refrigerator. Bear with me. So, elevators, they've been around forever. Archimedes, he actually created the first one. Elevators, as we know it, the first ones were all about moving freight from one place to the next. And as you can imagine, they were dangerous, right? No one knew how much to put on it. There were ropes carrying it. People fell off of them. So we had freight elevators, and someone decided, let's move people with freight elevators. Anyone know who that might be? You see the name every time you're in an elevator. Otis. Mr. Otis, inventor, showman, in 1853 goes to New York. He goes to the New York exhibition, shows everyone what a people-based elevator could be. He gets up on the stage, he asks someone to cut the rope, he starts falling, people start reacting, and all of a sudden, a safety brake holds him right there. And people are wowed. They're like, what just happened? He does that again and again and again, and all of a sudden, people start thinking about the elevator. This might be something we could use. But we didn't accept it. So they took this concept, they put it in place at a department store in New York. Tourists came from all over to come see this elevator. But they would look at it, and they wouldn't get on it. They would just stand there and look at this thing. Go, wow, that's nice. And they would back away from it. 3 years later, the department store got rid of the elevator because no one used it. Why? Two reasons. We actually didn't have a lot of multi-story buildings. Back in those days, believe it or not, when people built buildings, they tried to hide how many floors they had. They tried to make it look like there were fewer floors, and the companies would be at the bottom, and they would hide stuff at the top. They would store stuff all the way at the top. The idea of a penthouse, believe it or not, the superintendent in the building got the penthouse because no one wanted to be at the top of the building. They wanted to be at the bottom. Society's norms were different. We didn't even realize the value this thing brought to us, so we didn't accept it. On top of that, it had its own culture. Think about it today. When you get in an elevator, where do you normally stand when you're the only person in the elevator? So you're either a middle person or you're a corner person, right? So either you take all the space or you stand in the corner. So this particular piece of technology, this particular capability had its own culture. Now it even has its own music. But back then, no one accepted it, and no one knew what to do with it. And it wasn't till Mr. Otis started showing people that you could be safe in it. And that's what caused the elevator to improve. And today we're at a time where using magnets, we're going 45 feet, 50 feet a second. And some of you in your office towers probably have those wonderful dispatch systems where you wait and hope the elevator shows up because it's your floor, it's only servicing. And in some cases, they used to be vertical, and now they go horizontal as well. Like, it's quite scary what they're doing. But the technology hasn't changed. It's still a box with a cable with a brake. It's just society accepted it. So now let's move to refrigerators. Anyone use a refrigerator today? Oh, come on. There has to be more than one person. So who can tell me who actually created the first refrigerator? Bonus question. Coffee on me later, outside. It was the auto industry. It was a company called Frigid Air that's part of General Motors. It created the first refrigerator. And the reason they needed it was through their own process. They needed it to build vehicles. But if you go backwards, the first refrigerator was this really trendy thing. It was called an icebox. It was just a box. And it had ice in it. And that was it. And every week, someone would show up with another block of ice, and you'd put more ice in it. And that's how stuff stayed cold. And if some of you remember or have been in other areas, I remember my grandparents having one of those. And I remember with great glee as a kid seeing the ice guy come by like once a week with this big chunk of ice that he would put in it. So that's how people kept things cold. And when we actually had the first refrigerator, you know where people kept it? They kept it in the basement or away from everything else. It was the backup. It wasn't primary, it was the backup. And the reason it was the backup was because the compressor was too loud. It was too loud, it would keep the house awake. No one wanted it. You wanted the icebox for what you did. So fast forward, we have a refrigerator today that can do everything for you. It can connect to Amazon and order food. It can give you recipes. It can actually scan the inside of the refrigerator and tell you what you have in there. But why was the refrigerator so important? It changed how we thought about food. We went from preserved food that changed texture, changed taste, to just in time. Whatever you needed was there. You didn't have to go to the butcher to get something. You could go to one place, the supermarket, and buy everything. Food came globally. It wasn't local anymore, which has its own downsides. You could actually enjoy the taste of something year-round. You didn't have to wait till it was in season. Supermarkets spawned everywhere. Refrigeration cases gave you options, and even frozen dinners if you wanted them, but there's been downsides to everything. But nothing has changed society more than the refrigerator, because what it spawned off is a bunch of other capabilities that we don't even think about. Medicine. How much refrigeration is used in medicine? Transportation globally. It took the world and made it smaller. All of a sudden, this core capability became so central, and people built in it, off of it, used it to advance their own ideas. So you're pretty patient with me because you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with data and analytics, and what is he going on and on about? So let me tell you a little bit about me, and let me tell you about why this is important. As you heard, I'm at the Bank of Montreal. I'm accountable for enterprise data and analytics. What that's about, like many of you in our community, is about three things. How do we do things more effectively in the organization? We've got journeys today, whether they're customer, employee journeys. We have items that we look at and say, can we do that more effectively for the organization? Then there's the efficiency aspect. Can we do it cheaper, faster? Can we do it in a way that creates more value? And then finally, it's the customer journey itself. How do we think about the customer? How do we improve that customer journey? The underlying ethos for our organization is all about one thing. How do we get value? How do we accelerate the path to value? Now, if you think about these two models that I just talked about, refrigerator and the elevator, both of them brought certain capabilities to the table. The elevator challenged societal norms. It challenged the way we thought about buildings. It challenged the way people moved from one place to the other. It brought buildings into play rather than flat, one-floor or multi-floor homes. Whereas the refrigerator, the core capability got used by so many other things that we don't even think about it anymore. Right? Whirlpool invented the fridge that we know today, but so many other people got value from it. And we're able to extend that early thinking and create something new, something dramatic that changed society. And that's the challenge we face. With the work we're doing, how are we thinking about extending the norms and the way our organizations, our consumers, our partners think about analytics, think about data? And on the other hand, are we creating something that is so fundamental, so rich, so different, so differentiating that it changes the way everyone else thinks about it? So this is what change for me and for my group has all been about. What is the opportunity set? What is the opportunity set we're working with? And I'll tell you how we think about it. The first part of this journey starts with awareness, and that's why you're here today. What's happening? What's everyone else doing? What can I learn while I'm here? Then you take that nugget of awareness and you make it relevant to your organization. You make it relevant to your journey. So how do I take that refrigerator concept and now apply it to what I'm doing? And can I get value from it? But before you start any change, you have to have belief. You have to be like Mr. Otis standing on that platform and be willing to take someone cutting the rope, putting your own standing, challenging it, putting it at risk. And sometimes in organizations, it's hard to break the norm. So you have to build some belief. And you build belief slowly. Maybe it's a POC. Maybe it's something you partner on and do a little bit of and show people the value of. But the big jump off comes from belief to conviction. How do you get an organization to put all its energy behind something? How did Whirlpool take an idea that Frigidaire started for the auto industry and create the modern refrigerator, which in the 1940s, 8% of the population used? Would you build something for 8% of the population? You need a lot of conviction. So you're here for awareness. You're going to walk away and make it relevant. You're going to take that relevance and you're going to figure out, how do I build some belief in the idea, the opportunity set? And then how do I take it to conviction to really change the work you do, the organization you're with, the way you think about things, the next best idea? So I'll promise you one thing. Today, you will not look at the elevator or the refrigerator in the same way you did about 30 minutes ago. Because those two inventions are incredible and have really changed the way. So enjoy the rest of your 2 days. Think about whether you're going to change societal norms or are you going to build the next best thing that people are going to build off of. Thanks so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Sandip. I told you, you guys wouldn't be disappointed. Can I open it up to any questions?
It's too early for questions. Don't look at that table. That's my team over there, so they're not.
I see.
They're not allowed to ask questions.
All right. Well, I have one question, actually.
Sure.
So what resonated with me is you're a part of driving value from existing technology. This one might be kind of rough, but obviously everyone is talking about Gen AI. What are your thoughts on the different applications and people trying to pull value from Gen AI in every avenue? Yeah. Do you think that maybe we're too use case value focused, or does it need more time?
Look, I think like anything, there's a significant amount of hype, there's a significant amount of opportunity, and there's a significant amount of risk. And based on your organization, you may think about things differently. But I think what's important to me is that we need a safe place in this community to be able to experiment, to be able to take new emerging capabilities, new emerging technologies, to be able to bring things together, to then understand, is there truly value there? And what concerns me when I talk to my peers in other organizations, obviously we're in a regulated world, many of you may be as well, is how do we blend the art of what could be possible with the idea of how to extract value from it? And how do we do that in an ecosystem with new emerging capabilities that we don't have all the answers for. So I think there's a ton of capability here. I think there's a ton of value that can be generated from it. I think you have to be thoughtful. You have to think about your organizational culture. You have to balance how risk-averse folks are within your organization. And you got to find the right way to build that belief ever so slowly, because there is a ton there. And we don't know what's coming next. So, are we ready for wave 4, wave 5? What happens over the course of the next year and so on? So that's the way I would think about it. It looks like we have a question in the back as well somewhere.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Ray Kong from Arima. Thanks for your comments. Really enjoyed them. I think you partially answered my question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How do you manage the tension between a regulated environment and old infrastructure and convince your CFO to make investments in the things that you want to make investments in?
Fair question, and it's a question we grapple with, and I don't think there's a perfect answer to this. I think what helps, and I've seen it in my experience, I'll tell you a little bit about my journey. My world has always been around the intersection of technology, data, analytics, and I grew up, early part of my career, sales and trading, equity options, worked with a number of large data vendors and analytics vendors servicing the big banks in Chicago and New York. The formative years, 15 years at Morgan Stanley, 2000 through 2015. And let me tell you, nothing happened during those years. They were quiet years, it was just very laid back. And then chapter 3 of my journey, which has been with what I'll call heritage organizations that are looking to adopt new capabilities around data and analytics. With CPP Investments, that you as Canadians all are part of, with Bank of New York Mellon, and now with BMO. Now, coming to your question, in all these organizations, it's understanding what is the currency that is important in the organization. So what do I mean by that? If you're an organization where safety is first, consumer safety is the most important thing, trying to create change in that environment is very difficult because the currency is safety. There's no tolerance for some of the things that you may want to do with advanced capabilities. So you have to understand the currency that's important and speak relative to that currency. And for us, it's all been about value generation. Measure it relentlessly, talk about it relentlessly, certify it. So I'll give you an example. There was a program of work we did, and when we engaged with our internal customer, because I tell people at cocktail parties, I run a data and analytics company in BMO, and they go, "Oh, I didn't know BMO had one." I'm like, "We don't." But that's what I do. I help 50,000 people in the organization. But we measure everything. So we were asked to do this project. We were told this is what's needed. We exceeded expectations. We brought back $50 for every dollar invested. And we took that back to the CFO and others to build that belief. To say, you give us another dollar, we'll give you 50 back. We'll give you 50 back in P&L. We'll give you 50 back in savings. We'll give you 50 back in efficiency. These are real markers. So find the currency that works for your organization, use that currency, measure it relentlessly, and ensure that people focus on it within your organization and more broadly across the company. Those are some of the things that I've done, and I've found them to be fairly successful.
Any more questions for Sandip?
Awesome.
All right.
Have a great 2 days. Enjoy yourself. Go the elevator way or go the refrigerator or find your own path. Thanks so much.